All right, let's dive into Ondo Finance. It's this platform that's trying to bring these big-time financial products onto the blockchain. We're talking tokens backed by U.S. Treasuries, that kind of thing. And we've got a lot to cover today. We've got news articles, we've got those deep financial analyses, and even some chatter from social media to get a feel for the overall sentiment. We're even going to get into, get this, Donald Trump Jr. showing up at their summit. Apparently, he threw down millions.
Oh, wow. So this should be interesting.
Definitely. And then, of course, we got to tackle the big one, the big question. Can the ONDO token actually hit $100? I mean, is that even possible? We'll look at all the data together, see what you think.
Sounds intriguing. Maybe we should start by, really getting into what Ondo Finance actually offers. Like, what do they actually have? They've got these two main stable coins, USDY and OUSG.
Okay, so break those down for me. What are the differences between them?
So USDY, it's all about that yield. It's designed for transfers and it compounds daily. So for anyone looking for that passive income, that's a good place to start. And it's backed by short-term U.S. Treasuries, which are generally considered, pretty safe and stable.
So like a high-yield savings account, but on the blockchain.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Now, OUSG, it's a little more specialized, I guess you could say. It's geared towards institutions, the big players, and those who are, considered accredited investors. But here's what I find really interesting. It's available on the XRP ledger. That signals to me that they're really focused on that institutional adoption.
Right. They're trying to bridge the traditional finance world with the crypto world.
Exactly. And a key part of that is access. OUSG allows people outside the U.S. to get their hands on U.S. Treasuries, which, can be a real pain to do through traditional methods.
Yeah, I can see that. And I'm thinking about that whole 24/7 accessibility too. That's got to be a game changer, especially with how fast things move in the global markets, right? No more waiting for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange.
It is a huge advantage. It lets investors all over the world react instantly to changes, maybe snag more arbitrage opportunities, and just overall makes the market more efficient.
Makes sense. And speaking of opportunities, let's get into some of the things Ondo has been up to lately. They launched their global markets platform, right? Offering tokenized stocks, bonds, and ETFs.
They did, yes. But there's a catch. It's not available in the U.S. yet. Regulatory hurdles, But for everyone else who can get in, it's pretty groundbreaking, wouldn't you say?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, imagine owning just a fraction of a Tesla share, and it's right there in your crypto wallet as a token. They're even trying to make those tokens work in DeFi, so you could lend them out, use them as collateral. So many possibilities.
It's definitely got that future of finance vibe going for it. And they also launched their own blockchain recently, right?
That's right, they did. It's called Ondo Chain. It's what's known as a layer 1 blockchain. Think of it like their own custom-built foundation, specifically for handling all the complicated stuff that comes with real-world assets.
So they're not just building on top of other blockchains, they went and built their own.
Yeah, that's a bold move. For sure. It shows real commitment to what they're doing. Speaking of bold moves, we can't just ignore the whole Donald Trump Jr. situation. I mean, he pops up at the Ondo Summit and then invests. Definitely turned some heads.
It did. So WLFI, that's World Liberty Financial, and they're backed by Trump Jr. They put $4.7 million into Ondo tokens. And they're also working together to get Ondo's tokenized assets into their own system. That's a pretty big vote of confidence.
Totally. And especially coming from someone who, is seen as pretty traditional when it comes to finance.
Definitely. And it seems like WLFI wants to use those tokenized assets as reserves, for things like margin trading, lending, borrowing, that kind of stuff. They see the potential in this technology. It's wild how even someone like Donald Trump Jr., who hasn't always been, let's say, a fan of the crypto world, is now getting involved.
It really speaks to how the whole blockchain scene is becoming more legitimate and mature.
For sure. Now, let's shift gears and talk about the Ondo token itself. What's the story there?
Okay, so Ondo, it's the governance token for the Ondo DAO and their Flux finance protocol. Basically, if you hold Ondo, you get voting rights, you have a say in how things are run. Now, there are a total of 10 billion tokens out there, but only about 3.1 billion are actually circulating right now.
And I remember seeing online that there was a big token unlock recently. Did that cause the price to crash, like we often see?
So yeah, they did unlock a bunch of tokens, like 1.94 billion Ondo tokens, which was worth around $2.72 billion at the time. But the crazy thing is, the price didn't plummet. It stayed pretty stable, actually.
That's interesting. What do you think that means?
Well, it seems like the people holding onto those tokens, they're pretty confident. They didn't rush to sell, which means they probably believe in the long-term potential of the project. Of course, there could be other things going on too, but it's definitely a positive sign.
Yeah, no doubt. But now I'm thinking about that big question, the one everyone's asking, how high can this token really go? We've seen some pretty wild predictions. $100 Ondito. Seriously. That seems crazy. Let's break it down. Where does Ondo stand right now? Like, what about market cap and all that stuff?
Right. So right now, Ondo's market cap is about $3.8 billion.
Right.
And that puts them at number 30 on DeFi Llama.
DeFi Llama.
Yeah, it's this website that tracks all the money locked into different crypto projects. Pretty handy, actually. And Ondo also has a healthy total value locked, or TVL. Basically, that shows how much money is actually being used on the platform. So it's a good indicator of user engagement.
Okay, I got it. So it sounds like there's definitely room for growth. But we also got to think about all the other projects out there. Everyone's trying to get a piece of this tokenized asset pie. Some people are even calling these other projects vaporware. All hype, no substance. What makes Ondo different?
That's a really good question. And it's so important to be careful in this space. You know, what sets Ondo apart is that they're laser focused on real world uses and products that meet institutional standards. They're not just chasing the latest trend, they're building something that actually has real world applications. They've got working products, partnerships with big names like BlackRock and Franklin Templeton, and a clear vision for the future.
So they're actually doing the work, not just talking about it.
Exactly. And that, I think, is what will ultimately lead to their success. Now, whether or not they hit $100 Ondito, that might be a bit of a stretch, but it's completely impossible. We got to look at all the predictions, from the ones that are more realistic to the ones that are, well, let's say hopeful, before we jump to any conclusions.
All right, so let's dive into those price predictions and see what a $100 Ondito would actually mean for the project in the market as a whole. Stick with us. So those Ondito price predictions, huh? Some people are saying it could reach $100. Is that even remotely possible?
Yeah, some of those predictions are definitely optimistic. We've got some that are more grounded too.
Yes.
Let's start with one of those. One analyst thinks Ondito could hit $4 this bull cycle.
Okay.
Which would be a pretty decent jump from its current price, around $1.30.
Yeah, potential tripling of your investment. That would catch some attention. But how does that compare to other projects out there with a similar risk profile?
That's the question, isn't it? You got to weigh the potential gains against the risk. Another analyst is even more bullish. They're predicting Ondito could go as high as $7.50.
Whoa.
And then there are others who are saying it could reach $10.
Okay, so some serious potential gains there. But let's get back to that $100 prediction. What would have to happen for Ondito to actually reach that level?
Well, like we talked about before, Ondo's market cap is currently around $3.8 billion.
Yeah.
For it to hit $100, that market cap would have to, explode. It would need to be over $300 billion.
Wow, that's a huge difference. What other projects have market caps like that?
I mean, that would put Ondo up there with the big players, like Bitcoin and Ethereum. To get to that level, they'd need massive adoption, not just from individual investors, but from institutions too. And, maybe a little bit of that crypto magic we all know and love.
Right, right. So it's not totally out of the question, but it's definitely a long shot. But even if it doesn't hit $100, there's still plenty of room for growth, right? I mean, they're operating in a market worth trillions.
Exactly. The whole idea of tokenizing real-world assets, it's still early days. And Ondo is leading the way, building the infrastructure, making those key partnerships. They're attracting attention from some really big players.
It's more than just hype, right? They're actually building something useful, something that solves real-world problems.
Yeah, they're bridging that gap between traditional finance and blockchain.
For sure. Now, we've been focusing on the positives, but we also have to be realistic. What are some of the challenges that Ondo is facing?
Well, the regulatory landscape is still a bit of a mess. There's not a lot of clarity, especially in the US, which could definitely slow them down.
Yeah, that's true for pretty much everyone in the crypto space right now. What about competition?
Oh yeah, there are a lot of other companies trying to do similar things. The market for tokenized assets is getting crowded. Ondo needs to stay ahead of the game, keep innovating.
And then there's just the general volatility of the crypto market.
Right. It's a roller coaster, no matter how good the project is.
So what's your advice to listeners who are thinking about investing in Ondo?
Be smart about it. Do your research, understand the risks, and make your decisions based on your own personal situation. Don't let the hype or fear get to you.
That's good advice for any investment, really. Now, as we start to wrap up our deep dive into Ondo Finance, what are some of the key things you think listeners should take away from all of this?
The main thing is that Ondo Finance is definitely a company worth watching. They're building something innovative, something that could really shake up traditional finance.
And the idea they're built on, this tokenization of real-world assets, that's probably not going away.
It could fundamentally change how we invest and interact with assets.
Absolutely. And of course, the Ondo token has the potential to do very well.
But again, it's not without risks. Always do your own research.
Before we move on, I want to talk about something bigger than just Ondo Finance. Something about the potential of blockchain itself.
Okay, I'm listening.
Imagine a world where anything of value could be tokenized, not just stocks and bonds, but real estate, art, intellectual property, even things like carbon credits or voting rights.
That's a pretty amazing concept.
Right.
Tokenizing everything. It could make assets accessible to everyone, increase liquidity, and unlock all these new investment opportunities.
What would that be like for the average investor?
You could own a tiny fraction of a Picasso or a sliver of a Manhattan skyscraper, all from your crypto wallet.
It's pretty mind-blowing, and it's all thanks to projects like Ondo Finance paving the way.
Exactly. They're pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
So here's a final thought for our listeners. As you learn more about Ondo Finance and real-world assets on the blockchain, think about this.
What other things could be tokenized?
Period.
Things beyond the obvious.
What impact could that have on your life, your investments, the world?
Something to think about.
Welcome back. It feels like we've really, dug deep into Ondo Finance, all their different products, their strategy, that potential for growth, and of course those price predictions, some of which were pretty out there.
Yeah, definitely a wide range of opinions on where this could go.
And I bet some of our listeners are thinking, okay, I get it, but what does it all mean? What's the big takeaway here?
Well, for me, it's clear that Ondo Finance has a mission. They want to revolutionize finance as we know it. It's about connecting those traditional markets with this new world of blockchain.
And they're not just, throwing a flimsy bridge across the gap. They're building something solid.
Right, they're focusing on institutional grade products, advanced tech, and making it all accessible.
Exactly. And those stablecoins they offer, USDY and OUSG, it's like a way for people to, dip their toes into the crypto waters. But they're still connected to something familiar, like US Treasuries. And they can even earn some yield along the way.
It's a good entry point for a lot of people.
And then there's their global markets platform, which, isn't available in the US just yet, but still. It's opening up this whole new world of tokenized assets, stocks, bonds, ETFs, all in digital form.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is. And then, of course, we have the ONDO token itself, the fuel that powers the whole thing.
Right. Holding ONDO gives you a voice, plus you can potentially benefit from their growth.
And we talked about those price predictions. Some analysts saying $4, some saying $7.50, even $10 during this bull cycle. And that $100 target, well, it's a long shot, but in crypto, you never know.
Yeah, crypto's full of surprises.
But it's important to remember, this is all still pretty new.
It's exciting, but it's also risky. Don't get caught up in the hype and invest more than you can afford to lose.
Do your research. Understand the risks. That's good advice for any investment, really. Now, before we wrap up, I want to go back to that idea we touched on earlier about, tokenizing basically everything. It's a pretty big concept.
It is, and Ondo is right there on the front lines of this movement.
Beyond stocks, bonds, real estate, art, what else could we tokenize?
Right, what about intellectual property, carbon credits, even voting rights?
It could change so much about the world. Maybe we're just seeing the very beginning of a huge shift in how we think about ownership.
It's definitely something to watch.
Ondo Finance is pushing the boundaries, and whether they succeed or fail, it could have a big impact on the whole blockchain space.
So as you explore crypto, keep them on your radar.
Well said. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Ondo Finance. We hope you learned something new and that maybe you're feeling inspired to explore this space even further.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.